you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, yes, I am Reverend Beverley Strutt. I am the spiritual director here at Center for Spiritual Living East Hawaii. Today I get to share a message. Anybody got one? Anybody got one? I shouldn't give that invitation because you know what happens when I do that? Woo, it comes up. First of all, I am praying and hoping that everything that happened at the corner up the road, that everybody's in good hands, that the divine is present in there, holding everybody in love and safety, and is moving through correctly. We know this. We anchor ourselves. If you notice, this is what we do here. The minute something happens, we go to prayer. We even have sticky tapes on our desks. Remember to pray first. Prayer is one of those truly, truly amazing tools. And it's just really lovely because it segues straight into the joke for the day. And I was like, how do I bring this back around? Because when somebody is in distress, the last thing we want to go to is humor. And yet we must remember that the divine is having a brilliant expression through us. And a lot of that time, it comes with the relief of laughter. So today I'm going to share with you this little story. I'm going to put my glasses on just because I want to make sure I remember it correctly. I heard about members of a congregation who prayed for years that the Lord would do something about the disreputable bar across the street. One night the bar was hit by lightning and burnt to the ground. So the bar sued the church, sued the congregation of the church, that their prayer was responsible for the fire. So it went to the judge, and the judge looked at the case and he heard everything and he was like, well, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to rule on this count, but one thing I do know is that the bar owner has a lot more faith in prayer than the churchgoers. Yes. So we just center ourselves always in prayer, knowing that it does good. But it's just so wonderful to have a joke. And actually, you know what? As a matter of fact, it happened up in one of our local communities where there was a lovely bar restaurant that was across the road from a church. And basically, they weren't allowed to open on Sundays until they invited the church folks over. Come and have a party with us. We need to say everybody's happy now. We can all get along when we step out of the judgment of who and what it is we believe and how we should show up. Another great segue. Who's talking here? All right. So this month has been about vulnerability. And we walked through this month in a way that started with kind of that icky feeling around the word vulnerability. Nobody wants to be vulnerable. Keep away. I don't want to be vulnerable. I'm strong. I'm good. No vulnerability. And in that moment, we walked into a different way of seeing vulnerability as being an opening to be different, to show up differently. We also wanted to know what vulnerability was not. Vulnerability is not this oversharing and dumping on people. That's not vulnerability. That's yuck. So we will walk through that vulnerability. We had Reverend Eric here who spoke to us, brought Jesus back to us as that master teacher. And between Easter and Reverend Eric's talk, we were able to see that there was such a vulnerability of openness and willing to be different in the world that shows up, and that's where we go with vulnerability. We go with vulnerability as this place of, first of all, of course, looking at ourselves, finding out where we are, but more importantly, we go to vulnerability as transformation. So today, the talk is about power and possibilities through transformation, the transformational power of vulnerability that leads to amazing possibilities. That was a sentence that came up at 3 o'clock this morning. I had to get up and write it down, so I'm going to say it again. The transformative power of vulnerability that leads to amazing possibilities. Dr. Ernest Holmes, our founder of this teaching, speaks to transformation. In transforming energy into power, we are uniting an invisible essence with an invisible law, which is the way the universe operates. If we identify ourselves with the source, then our word establishes eternal harmony, transforms everything, rearranges everything to our benefit. It is in this act of complete surrender of the human to the divine, without the loss of the human, a complete inflowing of the divine into the human. One more time. It is the act of complete surrender of our humanness, that we do not lose the human, but we invite the complete inflowing of the divine into the human. So in vulnerability, we're inviting the divine in to be shown in and through us as we truly are. None of the stuff, none of all of that stuff that we've laid on, none of the conditions. In vulnerability, we're willing to open ourselves up, because the first part of being vulnerable is to have a deeper self-discovery, a deeper knowingness of what we're guarding, a deeper knowingness of what are those beliefs that keep us separate from other people. When we dive into our own discovery, we get to find out what that is. And Deepak Chopra, in the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, says this: when you discover your essential nature and know who you really are, in that knowing itself is the ability to fulfill any dream you have, because you are eternally possibility, the immeasurable potential of all that was, is, and will be. So when we open ourselves up to this deeper dive into who we are truly opening ourselves up to the greatest possibility that we could ever be. Yes. We lay aside some of the judgment. We open up, and it's not about becoming somebody else's doormat when you're vulnerable. Vulnerability is a power. It's a power to open and allow not only yourself to be open to newness and different things, but it also allows the people around you that same space. We'll move into that a little bit more later on. But as we walk through this week, and I've told you this before, whenever I come to a talk, it just seems like the universe goes, here, catch this ball. And here is the talk. Here is the experience of the talk. Is this fun? Mostly it's not. Mostly it's not fun, because it's asking me to dig deeper into me so that I can actually speak from this place of, oh crap, this stuff is really happening through each and every one of us. So I don't know if any of you read the newsletter this week, but in the newsletter I expressed that I'm in a time of grieving. Grieving for a very dear friend of mine who I just got told at the beginning of the week they've been given this person 2 weeks to 2 months to live from a very, very active form of cancer that entered through the jaw. This is a young man who just had his 56th birthday yesterday. Now, we deal with life and death as an ongoing process of life, but sometimes it hits you really, really hard. Hard enough that when I sat down to write my message, there was nothing else I could speak about. It had to come up. And I had no idea until I had already hit send that I was stepping into complete vulnerability. I was stepping into that place of, because there is a big tendency in the world to fix. And so I was stepping into that place of, well, here it comes. I'm going to be receiving whatever anybody around me wants to share about how they perceive my situation. Because that's what we do. We go in, we want to dig for more answers, we want to know more about it, we want to get more involved. And it's all out of a place of love. But is this what the person is really wanting when they show up in their vulnerable state and go, I can't see anything else but my grief right now. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's just going, I stand with you. I hear you. Without digging any further in, without knowing any more, because inevitably that person that has opened themselves up, and I speak from my own point of view, I have a support. I have a prayer support. I have a ministerial support. But I wanted to just be. I wanted to be able to express. So I stepped in. You know what? My community was flawless. You guys have been listening. You've been feeling. You've actually felt into that moment without being said, please, I need some space. I didn't even have to say that. You guys were unbelievably compassionate. I got some lovely little notes. I got a little phone call. Nobody went, come on, what's going on? What can we fix? Nobody did. I'm so proud of myself for being vulnerable, and I'm so proud of all of you that it only took this month for you guys just to go, we're ready, we're here, we're going to be in this vulnerable state, because in that atmosphere, we get to transform, we get to grow. There was no judgment about what I said. There was no opinions about what I said. There was just, we hear you. Whew, it was amazing, and the support there was just so real, so filled with love. It was just exactly what I needed in that moment. And I think it's because we've been talking about it. Not saying that that wouldn't have happened, but I know that that atmosphere is here present. And I'm going to share an additional story about this. It's from, it's a story about this gentleman, Mike, who was at the Maryland airport. And he took a fall because he has a degenerative neuromuscular condition, and because of that, he couldn't get up. So a young man came to his aid, and before he did everything, he said, what can I do to help? That's it. He said, what can I do to help? He then helped Mike to his feet, and this moment struck Mike not just because of the kindness, but also because the fellow who asked the question. I felt less helpless, less vulnerable because of his question. I will never, ever forget that. So part of this lesson that we're learning about being more vulnerable is coming through in a way that we are honoring the people around us as we would like to be honored. So just a reminder, before we jump in to fix it, before we jump into opinion and action and wanting more information because we feel we can hold the person better, step back and just ask the question, how can I help? Because in that place, you empower the person that is being vulnerable to say, I'm good, just be with me. Because we know that no matter where we are at any given time, we are not broken. And that is a great step to step forward when you're feeling vulnerable, is to know that you're not broken. You are actually in your wholeness because you're allowing yourself to be in full oneness with the divine right here, right now. Doesn't that feel good? Can you feel that you yourself could be called to be more vulnerable if that was the response that you were going to receive? Yes, that's it. So we start from ourselves. We dig first into our own truth to know who we are, so that we lay aside judgments of our own self first, and then of situations, so that when the situation, somebody is vulnerable in front of you, you can just say, how can I help? I don't need the story. I don't need anything. I'm here for you. Just here for you. I think it's a brilliant place to move to. So if nothing else, vulnerability, this talk through this month has brought us to here. And then today we step forward into the transformative power of the vulnerability. And from Reverend Ryan Alexander, who I told you at the beginning of the month, actually wrote the back outlines for this month. This is what they shared. Transformation, vulnerability lays the framework for us to reshape the societal narrative and create space for conversation and transformation. Vulnerability becomes something that is embraced and honored rather than something to be avoided or diminished. The power of collective transformation is made possible through the seed of vulnerability. Through fostering vulnerability in our families, if they're of origin or chosen, our communities and our world, we bring to the surface the possibility of real and dynamic change. The possibility of transformation becomes more than just about words or ideologies, but a reality through our willingness to be vulnerable. You see, we have to be willing to go there first before we can even think of transformation. So how can we lean into vulnerability to be a catalyst for transformation? Well, first of all, we have to decide that vulnerability isn't just about being open-bellied where somebody can hurt you. Vulnerability is also about being able to step into the unknown with confidence. Confidence in not knowing. All right? So I'm going to take this back a little step. So I have spoken about this before, where when we look at something coming our way and we see that big tiger out there, our ego jumps into play and goes, "It's a tiger, run, 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 run." But in the world that we're in right now, we don't necessarily have tigers, but we have many, many other things that look like the danger of a tiger that come to us, that we don't want to be vulnerable against. And so what the ego does is the ego collects all information and says, "Don't do this. Don't do that. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen over here, so let's not go down that road. You don't know what's going to be over there, so don't go down there. Don't open yourself up to something new because you don't know anything about it." This is a great job of the ego to protect us from killing ourselves, but it also creates this little case that is looking at as fear for us. Fear of the unknown, because if the ego doesn't know what it's walking into, it can't protect you. It doesn't know that that tiger that you're seeing is made of paper. It doesn't know it. It just sees a tiger. And so it says, "Stop, don't try, keep your boundaries up, keep your barriers up. You don't know what those people are thinking. You don't know what they believe. Stay away from them. They are bad. They are dangerous." Is this the truth? Probably not. But the ego doesn't know it. It can only go from its past experience. And its past experience is that if it looks like a tiger, it's a tiger. Right? It's judging. It's judging everything because its actual job is to stop you from killing yourself. So we love the ego for that. We love this part of the ego. It's not the prideful ego. It's not that, "Hey, look at me." No. It's the ego that just wants to keep you safe so that you can continue living, so that you can, just move through this world and have babies so we can keep the whole line going. Yeah. We need to stay. So what we want to do is we want to train that part of the ego. And we use vulnerability to do that. Vulnerability to the unknown. Now, we don't know what it's going to be. Is it going to look a little scary? Maybe. Is it? But most of the time, it's really not. Because once we know something, we no longer fear it. So that step of vulnerability for transformation is to be able to stand in the unknown easily. Be able to take that first step into the unknown. Yeah, I can see discomfort coming up in a lot of us going, "It's unknown. I don't want to go there." No. Go there. Go to that place of transformation. And why do we want to do that? Why do we want to put ourselves out there and go to that place where the unknown can become the known, and the known of great things? Because we change the world. We change the world. We get to lay down all those silly, limiting beliefs about what other people think, what other judgments are, what they look like, how they do. We don't know this. Most of the time we don't know. The ego is saying, this is what I've heard. This is, I'm going to keep people separate from me. We're not going to do this. No. If we want to transform the world, the seed is in vulnerability. The seed is in that first step of going, I'm willing to lay down my judgments or my perceptions or what I thought and step into that place of unknown. Because I'm supplied and supported by the divine all the time. I walk in paths of guided, guarded, and protected. This is what we teach. This is the truth. So we can do this. We can actually put aside these judgments and we can walk to that place, that edge of the cliff, and we can look over and go, oh my goodness, there's a step. Wow, I can actually take the staircase down. It's not just a chasm that I'm throwing myself into. But that's what the ego would have told you, because that's all that they heard. But I'm not knocking the ego, folks. The ego has a direct place. But we have let that side of it keep us away from people, anything that is unlike what we know. You know, in Science of Mind, we have a declaration of principles. And in that declaration, we say we believe the ultimate goal of life is to be in complete emancipation of all discord of every nature. In other words, anything that's causing discord in you, we believe that our truth, the ultimate goal, is to be emancipated from it. Does vulnerability give you that option to move away from it? Absolutely. That idea of stepping into, this is a discord. Maybe not. Let's clear that away. Let's integrate ourselves with other people that are unlike who we look like, unlike what we think. Because at the end of the day, that unknown on both sides becomes the known, and the fear disappears. It's the unknown that creates fear, not the known. In the CSL's global vision, a world that works for everybody, we see a world in which every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we're called to a higher state of consciousness and action. This is why we do it. Because we're called to a higher consciousness and action. If we are willing to step forward and be vulnerable and open and hold the space of it for others to step in, this is a world that will work for everybody. This is where we go. And part of that is, how do we grow? Brené Brown says so beautifully, she goes, vulnerability is the birthplace for innovation, creativity, and change. Yes? Anybody on board with knowing that that's the truth? Vulnerability, being open to the possibility of new and unknown, is the birthplace of innovation. If you are scared, you ain't creating a thing except more fear. If you're willing to open yourself up, you will be amazed at how your creativity flows. Not only that, that you'll allow other person's ideas to come in. When two or more are gathered, when two minds come together, we blossom into so much more. We can get the change. So what we do is we move away from judgment, move away from holding onto those old beliefs, move away from the fear of the unknown, and step in. So what is the call of action today? Remember that you are in control of your thoughts, your actions, and your choices. So you get to choose to open yourself up. You get to choose to step to the edge and see the step down. You get to choose that, you know what, I am going to write that email. And you know what, when we get into that place, I didn't even consciously choose to open myself up. It just happened. And I saw it afterwards and realized, yes, this is working. This stuff truly works. And from that place, there's no longer a fear of being open and vulnerable, because it proved itself right there and then. So this is how we move forward. This is how we change the world. This is how we let those seeds of vulnerability grow into magnificent, creative, life-affirming changes in the world. This is why we're here, to bring us all back into oneness, into wholeness, to work together, to know each other. And it starts inside yourself first, and then in our community. For in the community is being replicated out into the world. It can be no other way. We're ripples. We're ripples in this beautiful, beautiful pond of life. Thank you. So I have this little story from Mark Nepo. You know he's my favorite author. And I'm like, you know what? This is a little, I'm going to tell it anyway. This is a story of Wu Feng, a Manchurian diplomat from the 1700s who was posted with an Aboriginal tribe in the outskirts of Taiwan. Wu Feng befriended the Aboriginal chief, whose tribe beheaded one of its members every year as a form of sacrifice. Each year, Wu Feng pleaded with all of his compassion and reverence for life that the chief put an end to this custom. The chief would listen respectfully as Wu Feng would plead, and then after listening and bowing, the chief would summon the chosen tribe member and without hesitation behead him. Finally, after living with the tribe for 25 years, Wu Feng once more pleaded with the chief to stop the senseless killing. But this time, when the tribe member was called forth, Wu Feng took his place and said, "If you will kill this time, it will be me." The chief stared long into his friend's eyes, and having grown to love them, he would not kill him. From that day, the practice of beheading stopped. Of course, Wu Feng could have been killed, but his courage shows us that it is a certain point how we live instead takes priority. At a certain point for each of us, talk evaporates and words cannot bring love into the open. And this is the most important part of all. Only the soul's presence coming from us can attract the soul's presence in another. Only the soul's presence coming from us can attract the soul's presence in another. So be open, be vulnerable, so that you may attract that in another. This is how we change the world. And so it is. All right, let's take it to prayer. Let's just breathe into this moment right here, right now. I'm missing somebody. You moved your chair. I was like, let's take a deep breath in, and I didn't hear the... So we'll do it again. Let's take another deep breath in. So we lean in. We just lean into this time and this place. We lean into this only action that's happening right now, which is the divine. We lean in openly. We lean in complete vulnerability, for we are truly supplied and supported in every way. We are the magnificent expression of the divine, and with that comes all that the divine pours forward on us each and every day. There's no limit, there's no holding back. We open our hearts and minds to receive all of this magnificence. But it is in the opening, in the vulnerability, that God pours forward even more, for there is an opening for it to go. And so I know for each one of us as we walk our path this week, that there is a willingness to try something different. There's a willingness to be open to this divine energy and power that moves through us when we are open and vulnerable. There is a willingness to hold the place and space for somebody that is showing their vulnerability. And as we walk this path, we walk it with ease and grace. We walk it with joy and love. We walk it knowing that we're all walking each other home, and it is good. So I just release this prayer, I release this message, knowing that it is done in the mind of God, for Spirit has said yes. Yes, my beloveds, yes. It is done unto you as you believe. So I say, let's stay open and be. And together we claim this by saying, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Susanna.